Some of you may remember, if you were here last year, a panel with Arthur Bloom, a musician, and Timothy Donnelly, who was an Iraq War veteran. And Arthur works with severely wounded veterans in hospitals around Washington, D.C. And the really interesting thing for me as I began to get to know kind of the work that they were doing was to realize that it was in fact something inherent about music. It was the discipline of learning an instrument, learning how to sing, playing with other musicians, that actually was the thing that had the therapeutic value. So it was something inherent to the art that in fact was constructive. It wasn't just something nice to do. It wasn't a distraction for people who were really, suffering grievous wounds, but it was fundamentally related to the art. And I think the same thing is true with Storycatchers. There's something about theater and the process of creating a character outside of yourself that's had a very powerful effect. So let me just ask Meade, tell us what Storycatchers is and who it serves.
Okay. Well, our mission is to prepare young people to make more thoughtful life choices through the process of writing, performing, and producing original musical theater inspired by personal stories. So what that means is that the process helps young people at risk in the community and our detained and incarcerated youth to look at the traumas that they have suffered in their lives and to integrate those traumas into their present circumstances, to use the process of creating theater to look at their lives, the choices that they're making, the consequences of those choices, their environments, their relationships, and to look at the moment in time that they are at right now and to imagine a future that could come out of that. So we have a year-round program where we start with storytelling, and the storytelling takes about 8 to 10 weeks, and then we do a staged reading. And in the staged reading, no one reads their own story. Once you write the story, you step into someone else's, so that it's all about empathizing and actually looking at the connections between your stories and the similarities and dissimilarities. And then we do another set of those, and then in the summertime, or whatever time of the year it is for that particular program, take all the stories and you start blending them. You make composite characters, you look for the dramatic lines that match and don't match, and you create a dramatic structure, and we do we create a musical, a one-act musical, and we do a preview of it. And then in the next stage, we do a full production. And what's unpredictable is you never know who's going to be around from beginning to end. Sometimes you have people that are there through the whole thing. Sometimes you have people come back because the system is a revolving door. You see people that come back again just in time to do the production. And we know many of these kids for years. What we wanted to do today was to have Angelica sort of show you this process through telling the story of what happened to her when she was working with fabulous females.
So why don't we start there? Let's actually see, let's do some art. So.
Violence is everywhere. That's just the way it is. In my city, people die every day. Death is like a storm. It's always hanging over us. But just like lightning, you don't know when or where it'll strike. In 2009, I'm incarcerated at the Illinois Youth Center in Warrenville, Illinois, for violating probation. I meet Miss P and I join Storycatchers' Fabulous Females group. My journey over the next 4 years, as I'm incarcerated, released, and reincarcerated for probation and parole violations, begins with the story of my life on the streets of Chicago. My guys and I are driving late. So busy getting high, we don't even realize we already deep in the south side. That's when we notice on our left a car full of guys. I turn to Yak, peep these flakes. Yak turns to Monkey, flag 'em, D. We start forking the other car. They flag us back, rolling down the window, yelling, DK, D-side, po. We speed up and sideswipe them. Bam, metal against metal. We're racing as we exit the E-way, still following them. At 79th and Harlem, we see a cop. Both of our cars slow down. The cop passes. We switch lanes and ram them from behind again. Dragon, killer, they speed up. We smash them again. They roll down the window. Dragon, as a brick comes sailing through our rear glass and lands right by my feet. Pee-wee throws a crowbar at them. Their car is already banged up. They pull over, and for a split second I think they had enough. Then the driver hops out the car, and he pops the trunk. Cherry asks Pee-wee, y'all ain't got the thing? Nah, not even. Let's break. Hell yeah, back to the hood where it's good. We cruise up Oakley, and right on 23rd, we come to a stop because we peep one of the folks. G-Lo lowers the window. Munchies, what's good, D? Munchie staggers over to the ride, eyes wide open. His best friend Yak, what you doing now right now? Nothing, D, just chilling. I can't stay in the crib anymore and I'm a little tore up. Dang, folks, you just got out of boot camp a month ago, nah? Yeah, like 3 weeks ago, barely. As Munchies leans on the ride, I notice that the clean, fresh white tee he's rocking has stains on it just below the collar. So either folks is a messy eater or you slapped, D. Everybody starts laughing. He's cheesing from ear to ear. A refreshing break from so many of the hardened, bitter guys in this neighborhood. He's cute too, only a year older than me, dark, tan skin, and exotic features. His ears are kind of big, but in a cute way. Well, we finna ride out, folks. You wanna ride? Nah, I'm cool. It looks like y'all packed anyway. We all know there's no room in the car. Munchies knows it too. So you just gonna leave my folks out there like that? Yak is angry. Nah, you strapped, D? Pee-wee asks Munchies. Nah. Then we got you, D. We gonna get you something to be out here on patrol. As G-Lo starts to drive off. We'll be back in 5 minutes. But not even 5 minutes later. Stacks taps G-Lo. Turn on the radio, turn on the radio. You hear gunshots? He cuts the system. Dang, I hope Munchies went inside. Let's go back, folks. G-Lo yells, hell yeah, hurry up, hurry up. Me and Cherry glance at each other, locking eyes. We know what's yet to come. When we get back to the corner, we expect to see him gone. I think they got him. We see Turtle's ride pull over next to Junior's sports bar. An ambulance pulls up across the street from El Güeros. The paramedics run to the car with a stretcher. They drag Munchies out from the back seat. He's unconscious. His once white tee is now stained with blood. Miss P encourages me to go deeper emotionally with this story, but I don't want to show anybody that I could be soft. I do sign up to become a playwright that summer, even though I'm having trouble dealing with one of the girl's stories. The invisible girl tells how Jessica's father, when she is just 7 years old, gives her to a 57-year-old truck driver friend. He feeds her junk food and rapes her repeatedly. Jessica comes home to hear her father and his friend laugh about it. When we read the story at a staged reading in the spring, all the girls cry, but not me. I approached Miss P in the hallway that summer. You know, I can't feel sorry for Jessica. If I feel sorry for her, then I will have to feel sorry for myself. I lower my voice so no one can hear. See, I was 15, and there was this older guy from the neighborhood, Carlos. It was late, and I needed a ride home from a party. Carlos says yes to the ride, but then turns down a dark alley that backs into train tracks. And he's bigger, and he's heavier, and he forces me. No one believes it was rape, even though my parents take me to a hospital and a police station. At the station, the detectives ask my parents to leave the room, then tells me Carlos said I was 18, and that if I go to court, it will get real ugly. His lawyers will make it look like I was the one who wanted it. When my mom comes back in the room, the detective holds out a paper and tells us to sign, dropping the charges. And we do. As my sophomore year begins, I try to forget about it, to pretend everything is okay. But I find myself becoming more and more angry, enraged, really. I start smoking weed all the time, barely going to school anymore. My mom fights me and calls me a liar for saying I was raped. And then one day, I leave school early to go to McDonald's with some friends. We smoke some weed. I start having a good time, acting silly, knocking hats off of strangers. I even run up to a freshman and steal his dog tag right off his neck. When I look down, I see it has a Cubs logo on it. I throw it back at him. You can keep it. The Cubs suck. All my girlfriends start laughing. Angie, you crazy. You wouldn't really take something from someone. Oh, I wouldn't? Pick out any purse you see. Point the girl out, and I'll get it for you. We see a girl walking with her friend, about to walk right past us. Cherry says, that one, that black purse right there. I'll be right back. I start running toward the girls. Right before I get to the girl, I yank her purse from her shoulder. It falls to the ground. She turns around and I punch her in the face. It feels good. She falls to the ground. She reaches out to grab my hair, so I keep punching her in the face. I can't stop punching her. The girl falls again. We all start kicking her. It feels good to finally let my anger out. The next day, I'm talking to my friends in the lunchroom when I see the girl. She points me out to the police, and they cuff me. You're being charged with strong arm robbery. And this is the case I'm here on now, I tell Miss P. Miss P and I have a lot of conversations about the connections between my stories, what happened to me, how I felt, the choices I made, how I'm locked up now. We talk about what happens when you leave jail and go home to the same neighborhood. Can you really make it and change your life? Go to college even, if you hang out with the same people. So our playwriting group creates a character, Marie Therese. We take the incidents that happened to me. We make Marie a ghost girl, a spirit hanging between life and death after a shooting. And we call the musical, If I Cry for You. Sorry, talk to me. I am Marie Therese. I just got out of jail. I go to school downtown in the Loop. One day I'm late for class. Desperate, I ask some old friends for a ride. As I get in the car, they don't turn downtown toward the Loop. Where are you going? I gotta get to school. They laugh and turn into the old neighborhood. I can't go there. I'm gonna be late for class. Let me out. As I run to the bus stop, I see him, Carlos, the guy who raped me. I stare at him. He stares back at me. I could see he doesn't even recognize me. And this makes me more angry. And because this moment did not happen in real life, because this moment happened in theater where anything can happen, Marie Therese gets to say everything I have wanted to say for years. Carlos, look at me. Look at me. How do you not know me? How can you sleep at night knowing what you did to me? You killed this little girl. I'll never be the same because of you. Chill. It was only a little sex. I was drunk. You shouldn't have gotten in the car with me. Come on, tonight is different. Don't touch me. Don't you dare ever touch me again. I hate you. I hate you, Carlos. I wish you would die. I wish you would die. You and your stinking body die in rotten hell. I turn away. All my anger is gone, and I'm left standing on the corner, just wishing my mom could love me and be proud of me again, like she was when I was a little girl, before Carlos raped me and all we did was fight. So I dig into my pocket, and I look for my phone. Maybe mom could get me. Maybe mom could take me to class. But I can't find it. Hey, girl, what you doing? What's that you reaching for? Hey, girl, answer me. As I finally get my phone out of my pocket, I hit 5 for mom. And that's when I hear gunshots. I turn around to see where it came from, and I see it's from Carlos, and he's running away. And that's when I realize that I'm hit. As I start to fall slowly, everything's turning black. Except I see this girl, and she's catching me. And that's when I realize it's her. It's the girl I beat over and over again. And at this very second, I realize this girl feels toward me the way I feel toward Carlos. I have wrecked her life the way he has wrecked mine. And oh my God, I feel something wet in my eye. No, 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 Marie Therese. My stupid pride overwhelms me. You are never going to cry. Not now, not ever.
If I cry for you, must I cry for me? If I take off the mask that says I don't care, do I have to feel sad for the girl revealed there?
As my heart freezes, I see the girl look down at me, at the single tear staining my cheek.
If I cry for you, must I cry for me? If I take off the mask for the girl with no past, do I have to feel sorry for the girl in the glass? When I caught you, I was forgiving you. I still forgive you.
I accept.
If I cry for you, I must cry for me. Yes, I must cry for me.
Thank you. I read a script of that, but I hadn't actually seen it. And it's a little different in person than it is sitting on a piece of paper. So this piece is mixing, you're talking about your story, but then the part with Marie Claire, that's from another larger piece. That's one of the theater pieces, right?
The character Marie Therese was the character that me, the girls, and, well, Miss P, the girls and I created. And it was used in the fall production of If I Cry for You.
And why create a separate character? I mean, why do you need Marie Claire when you can actually tell your story? Marie Therese. Oh, I'm doing the magazine.
I love that magazine.
And you could be on the cover. Marie Therese. So why create that second character when you're clearly very good at telling the story from your own point of view as well?
Well, the point of what we do this is unusual that you would perform your own story, and really it's only our alums that do that when they come out, because they're demonstrating, as she did, what we do. But in the process of it, you want to be able to let go of those traumas, and you want to be able to objectify it and to see it. And often you are able then to not only see your story, but the story of all the people who are in your story. Frequently the kids recognize the pain that their parents are in, or their grandparents, or the reactions that people have to the things that they do. The character of the girl who gets beaten up becomes different when you can actually see them. But then when we get to the point of creating the big play, as the kids call it, it's kind of ritualistic. We actually just did this for the fall play, where we sit down and the kids rename the characters. And so they choose the name for the characters. And sometimes they choose, last year one of the girls chose a mother who had died of a heroin overdose. So it's people that mean things to you, but they're not you. And then it becomes universal, because by the time it gets on the stage and someone else is playing it, and maybe it's not even someone who was part of the playwriting process, they step into it, but they have similar experiences. And so, you know, it's art, it becomes universal. It becomes everyone's story. And you can then begin to put it away, and something that was very painful for you becomes something almost beautiful.
Right. And we spoke earlier, and you said that you've only this summer begun to sort of perform this piece again. What is it like going back to this same story over and over again?
Well, we've done a lot of rehearsal, Meade and I, and at first, I've actually performed this piece twice before in the past few weeks. One of the times was at a trauma summit at a high school in Inglewood. It's one of the communities in Chicago that has the highest crime rate and the most violence there. So the reaction I got from the kids was somewhat mixed, and it was kind of, at first it was a little difficult for me to really remember again and reiterate to myself that I have to separate myself from the character and to see things as from the story point of view, like how we had discussed. But it was actually amazing that at the end of the trauma summit, there was a young high school girl who had approached me, who had told me that she had went through some of the same things I had went through, and that it was moving for her to see that I had grown up to become somebody else and not let my circumstances change me, but to grow from them and make something beautiful out of it, like Ms. B had said.
Right. And I was reading in the biography that you manage your family's business and a lot of other stuff right now. What's going on in your life today?
Well, today I do manage the family business. We have a bar in Chicago, and it gets a little hectic sometimes because it's just me. But I got a great team of we're women owned and operated. So I'm proud to say that it's all of us women coming together. My mom's the owner, I'm the manager, and I have a few bartenders who are all women. So it's a lot of camaraderie, and it's really, and when anything gets difficult, we pull each other up. So it gets easier because during the week I'm performing and rehearsing and doing different projects with Storycatchers. So.
And how, I mean, you've told your story of having been raped. How common is that from the girls you know from having been in juvenile detention?
Well, I could say, I can't put an actual number on it at this moment, but I can say most of the girls that I've been incarcerated with have all had some sort of traumatic sexual abuse happen to them. And it's actually a very disturbing trend that you see a lot of trauma happen to young girls, and that it does lead to incarceration. Ms. P actually does trauma checklists with us, and to go over some of the different life experiences we've all been through. And it's really amazing to see how many of us have all been through the same thing. And being in the Illinois Youth Center, it's the only juvenile state facility. So we have for girls. So I wasn't there just with other girls from Chicago or other girls from my community. I was there with girls from all over the city, all over the state. As downstate as Galena, Illinois, as far north as Rockford, and from all over. So it's really interesting to see how all of us from different walks of life really have all the same things happen to us, and it's amazing when we come together and make something beautiful.
There was a statistic that was in an article that you gave me, I think it's from 2012, from the Journal of Child and Adolescent Trauma, and I'll just read it. One production included 44 stories, which contained 32 accounts of direct violence inflicted on the girls, including 10 rapes, 3 gang rapes, 5 cases of child sexual abuse, 9 physical assaults, and 2 instances of being shot. So the statistics today apparently like between 50 and 60% of young women who are incarcerated have suffered either sexual abuse or trauma. But does that number make sense from what you've experienced?
No, because in our experience, pretty much everybody has. Once you open up someone's story of being sexually abused or raped, I mean, my first experience of doing a writing session with girls was that one girl started talking about having been raped by her mother's boyfriend, and then suddenly it was like pushed a button on everybody. Every single girl in the room was talking about the same thing. I just let them all talk at once. But it was everyone, and it was just like a group chorus. I mean, and that's part of the storytelling thing, is it does allow for many stories that have not been told to be told.
And Angelica mentioned a trauma checklist, and so when you're dealing with these kids, what access do they have for any kind of therapy, treatment? Do they have any sort of response to the trauma?
Well, at the youth center, each girl has a counselor and a therapist, for one thing, and you know, it varies as to how I hear girls that love their therapists and their counselors, and girls who are like, I would tell her anything. But we have a good relationship with the counselors, therapists. We meet with them. They often encourage girls to join the group that are not talking to them because it feels safer and friendlier to talk in our group generally. And then they come to the shows and they learn the traumas. And then they're there, they're able, and I think that's a big part of what we do, because we do a lot, we spend a lot of time, we get there early, we stay late, so we talk to all the institutional staff, we make everybody our friends, because we know that when we leave, those are the people that are there to support the girls, and or guys, depending. But also, when a story is told, we had one girl who had been in a tornado downstate, and on that day, she and her brother had skipped school, and they had a fight. And she said, I hope you die. And the tornado came that night, and he did die. And she never told anyone that she felt personally responsible for his death. And so she started burning down houses. She quit all her stuff. She ended up incarcerated. And that is the trend. The pattern that we see is there's a trauma, there's an emotional reaction to that trauma of anger or depression. Everybody, you start doing drugs, you drop out of school, you stop doing positive activities, you go find the other angry kids who may be gangs or just angry kids, and you start committing crimes, and then you end up incarcerated. And so what we're trying to do is to get kids to see that path, that this happened to me, but then because this happened to me, I felt this way, I made these choices, and this happened. And if you own that path, then you can change it, and you can change the future. And a lot of treatment programs in the juvenile system are more about take responsibility for your actions, but they don't go back to what happened to you, why did you feel that way? And so Jessica's story, which was the one about being given to the trucker, she had been in sexual offender treatment because she had molested someone else, and nobody asked her, who molested you? So we're trying to also educate the system. And we work with the Children's Illinois Trauma Coalition. I'm on the advisory board of the Juvenile Detention Center. And so we work with the directors at the top so that we are in constant conversation about how the system can change and what can happen to make this better.
I mentioned in the beginning the idea of trauma therapy, and in the article you gave me, there are some traditional steps in trauma therapy, like there's a public acknowledgement of what happened to you, and then there's an effort to reconstitute some kind of meaningful world.
Right. There's a wonderful book by Judith Herman called Trauma and Recovery, which is sort of the seminal work on trauma. And what she's come down to saying, basically the basic tenet is that in order to heal from trauma, it must be told publicly, it must be told in a narrative, and there must be a community reaction to it. So how perfect is theater? You just act it out right there and you get, but a community reaction. And we do try to shape the plays as well to have some kind of, something we want the community to do. The play that we're doing this fall, we had a girl in the last session whose mom was in prison, and she hadn't seen her for a while, and her stories were all about her acting out was because she didn't see mom, and she was angry, and mom had written her a letter saying, I can't be your mother anymore, I'm a terrible mother, and da-da-da-da, and that was her last story, was talking about reacting to that letter. And so we worked through the system to get the mom to come to the show. And that was how great was that, to get another correctional facility to let mom come. And yes, we were all sobbing. She walked in the door. And we didn't tell Ashley because we didn't want, what if it doesn't happen, that'll be even worse. But then when it happened, the entire group of girls and everybody, we just sobbed. It was so wonderful. And so that's what our show is going to be about, because I think that's really important, is what happens to kids when their parents are incarcerated, and what can the system do to make that better. And should we be locking up all of these people, and shouldn't there be a system for families to stay together? There's a big movement in Illinois for there to be community, kids released to community centers rather than being incarcerated in the big detention center downtown, which is the largest one in the country.
And Angelica, there's a line in the piece you performed, I won't remember exactly, but the child inside me, that child is dead. After having gone through this, how do you feel about that line? Do you still feel that child is dead?
Well, I do feel like the different life experiences I had, whether it be good or bad, really helped mold me, mold my character into the woman I am today. I don't think I'll ever return to being the same as I was as a little girl, but I think because of the good people that have been put in my path and the good experiences that I've had, I've been able to overcome the bad ones and really grow from it and move on and now give back.
Right, and you're actually now working with kids in the system or kids who are at risk or both?
Well, recently I did go back to, I went back to Warrenville, and it was difficult because who wants to go back to jail? But I understood that I would be doing a lot of good by the girls if I showed them how I've moved on and I've separated myself from being incarcerated, but I still want to give back and tell them my story and share with them how things can be beautiful at the end of the day. You don't have to stay locked up. You don't have to go move on to a women's prison. You can go home and go to school and change your life and really make a difference.
I wanted to ask about where the program's going now, and you've actually made a big sort of expansion of the way in which this is serving the same people.
One of the things you have to know that the Department of Juvenile Justice was founded, but as I like to say, not funded, in Illinois several years ago. And so it was true, the people, nobody had a contract for they were all, hired as consultants. But there was an idea in that initial plan, which was an aftercare specialist, which would be someone who, unlike the adult parole officers, would actually mentor kids to go back to school. They would meet the kid on the way into the system, they would meet the families, they would get them into counseling, they would help find jobs. And there were a few of those people that were trained, but most kids had adult parole agents. And what adult parole agents do is you get a list of rules that you have to keep about curfew, about going to school, about staying in your house, about not having a dirty job, things that inevitably will be broken, and so you will end up getting a warrant and then being back incarcerated. And the crime of that is that it costs $111,000 average, $177,000 a year for a girl to be locked up, and 49% of those are parole violations. So it's not for committing another crime, it's for having a fight with your mom like Angelica did, and having, your clothes out. But, something like that, which is not what you would lock somebody up for if they didn't have a crime on their record. So what we've been doing, we've been talking to IDJJ for a while about an aftercare program, and we just got the funding, and we're 3 weeks into the pilot program, and we're doing a thing called Changing Voices on 78th and State, which is in a high crime neighborhood on the south side. And what we have now is 10 boys and 2 girls, and it's a wonderful thing because it's a job, which is the one thing we've learned over the years as kids come back to us and say, we want to be with you, we want to volunteer with you, we want to mentor you, is that they have to make money, and if they're not making money through us, then they go get a job that ends up prohibiting them working for us because of the job hours, etc. So this is a job, it's $10 an hour, and those kids are young people, they're actually 16 to 24, so some of them have been in the adult system as well, are being trained, they're going to take their stories out into the community, and they are being trained as peer leaders to do an intervention with kids in their community. And our big vision for that is that it would be in every judicial district in the state, and that we would have kids, young people, adults, doing theater. How big is that? To do the arts for a job, coming out and communicating to your community and your peers, the possibilities of not committing crimes and getting locked up, but actually doing something productive for your community. And eventually that program would be run by the people that we raise up. And what was great this week is that I have had, the first kids I ever worked with were boys, and they were all automatic transfers, which they were being tried as adults. So most of them went off to adult prison, and some of them are now getting out. And so because this is a program on the outside, they can come in and work without having to go through extensive background checks that would prohibit them doing that. And what's great for the kids is they fill out this application, and it asks, how many facilities have you been to? And the opposite of filling out an application anywhere else, where you're like, oh my God, do I say I committed a felony? They were laughing about it because we have a whole page which just, we want your history. And so that this is a good thing here, because you're going to use that history, you're going to use those experiences to change the world.
I think we're probably getting to the point where we better start taking questions. There won't be any time. There's a microphone on that side if you want to line up, but we also have a walking microphone. And maybe it's just easier to walk the microphone over here. One quick question. What happens to Marie-Therese? She's left here. You call her a ghost girl. What's the end?
Well, while we were creating the character and actually finishing up the story and the script, Miss P and I were really in cahoots about what happens to Marie-Therese at the end after she has her epiphany, after she realizes the trauma that happened to her enabled her to victimize somebody else. So I asked Miss P the question when we were done with all that. Can Marie-Therese live? Does she have to die? Can she live through this and overcome? And
because we had hit that moment, because it was an open question. Marie-Therese could die, she could live, and she has come back to the facility to like give ghostly advice to the girls that are getting out, and it was it's always the light bulb moment when you're working with someone when she looked at me and she said, well, it was that moment where she gets forgiven. Can she live now? I said, yes, she can. She should.
Thank you for a wonderful performance, and the work you're doing is amazing. It truly is. I was, my sister over here, were born on the South Side, so know something about Chicago, although I don't live there now. In any event, a couple of quick questions. First of all, for those of us who are fortunate enough to not know about the juvenile justice system in any detail, for a crime like stealing someone's purse, when you're convicted, how long are you in prison? And what happens if a child is sent to prison and they become an adult while they're in prison? And my other question is, if I can get two questions in here, is the program for boys and girls, and if so, are they in the same program or separated? Or do you bring them together at some time or what?
Well, the facilities are separated, although actually we started at the Cook County Juvenile Temporary Detention Center, and as I said, I started with boys, and there are many, many more boys there than there are girls. I mean, like there's 100 boys for every 6 girls. And I used to have the girls come and be in the plays. And those were huge plays at that time because the detention center was organized differently. And what I noticed is that for the girls, it became about, and for the guys, because all these guys were automatic transfers, or a lot of them were, so they were going off to prison. And so it was like a last chance, with the girls. And so we'd find little notes, meet me under the stage when the lights go out. And the boys were primarily the writers in those days, so the boys are much more action-oriented, out on the street kind of things, less relational than the girls. And so it just became clear that the girls needed their own space because they weren't telling their stories, and it was like kind of uncomfortable. And the girls would fight over who was being seen by this boy who was like the lead, and so we decided that it needed to be a completely separate program. And as I said, the first night writing session, they talked about being raped, and everybody did. And so it was a way of making that safe and, keeping it separate, although they did perform for the boys, and that was problematic sometimes because the boys could be very abusive. And I went to the superintendent and I said, why are we abusing them more by having this? And so his solution was to have these big muscular men stand in front of the audience, really, and do get a little better. So those were 2 separate programs in the same facility. We had the Chicago Foundation for Women recommended that we take because the detention center was sued by the ACLU, and there was all kinds of stuff. It was being investigated by everybody. So they said, it would be a more stable program if you go to the girls' facility in Warrenville, and they're really more program-oriented. So that's when we went there. And then the facilities for, youth they're not co-ed. The boys are in the boys and the girls are in the girls. So what we do when we do the plays is we have our teaching artists on stage with the kids. Like we have Oz, who is our regular drummer. We call him it's funny, the sort of resident rapist in a way, because he's very safe. He's a really great guy, and you can't have a girl playing a guy because it's just not authentic for that. He's a big guy, and so And it also, so we actually sort of like that, and so we put our teaching artists there, and they're responsible for making sure that the play happens, that if a kid has, you know, sometimes a parent doesn't show up and a kid starts to have a breakdown before the thing starts, that they're responsible for keeping the kids together emotionally during a show. Although I have to say we were so proud, we had 100% parent attendance at the last girls' show. And, you know, it was amazing, you know. But it's because we have great board members, and they go pick parents up, and they buy train tickets and bus tickets, because, especially for the girls, people come from you know, the parents are leaving in the middle of the night to come to a show at noon. So did that answer your question? I kind of wandered off there.
I just wondered about incarceration for crimes like...
Actually, I was
You were on juvenile probation.
I was on juvenile probation at 15. I violated my probation at 17. Was incarcerated for a date not to exceed my 21st birthday. So for the majority of my time in Warrenville, off and on again, 3.5 years, I was an adult.
But you weren't being charged as an adult.
I wasn't charged as an adult. It was a juvenile case. But because the way the justice system is set up, they can detain you up until your 21st birthday.
In the juvenile system.
In the juvenile system.
Stealing somebody's purse, you got 3 or 4 years in prison?
Yes, and that is not unusual because of it's parole violations. So many kids commit one crime. I had a girl who stole a car, and she was still in once at 15. 4 years later, we had her, she was 20 years old. She had a 6-month-old baby that she could not see because the boyfriend and she were not married. And, you know, it was all for stealing that car a long time ago because she had run away with him to California. Now, is that a crime? You know, we incarcerate kids for things that are not crimes. And it costs us a lot of money. So imagine if we reinvested the money into community programs and kept them out, you know, maybe never incarcerate them. It would be a different face.
Here, because the microphone's here.
First, amazing, and the story. I mean, I've been sobbing the entire time because it's so moving and impressive what you've accomplished. I am really struck by a lot of the things you've said, but one thing is, at a community level, why there's a tolerance for the level of sexual assault that's happening to girls. And I'm wondering, I mean, because there's the system that we're talking about, but then within communities, these girls are being assaulted and raped. And I would love to hear your perspective on it, because I think from the outside sometimes it's hard to even fathom that it would be tolerated.
Nobody wants to deal with rape, or, I mean, it's one of the things that Judith Herman in her book said, is that rape is the hardest trauma to overcome because nobody wants to talk about it, so it's often not acknowledged publicly. The trauma summit that we just did, we were supposed to originally, when we hooked up to do that, we were going to do a story about a girl whose brother is shot and killed in the park. Well, because we were doing this, and I thought, well, why don't we just do Angelica's story? Will save me some rehearsal and then having to reconstruct this other one. But when I said we wanted to do a story about rape, they said, no, we can't do that. Why can't we have killing? You know? And so, I mean, what sense is that? What sense does that make? That it's okay to have a story about shooting someone and dying, but, you know, physically sort of killing a girl by raping her is not something they want to deal with. So I took the word rape out. That was my thing. I said, we'll look at it in the broader context of trauma. We'll list all the other possible kinds of trauma, and then we just won't call it rape. We'll just do it, you know? So it was obviously out there. And then it was fine, because people just don't want to hear the word sex, and they don't want to hear the word rape. You know?
The conversation screwed up. I mean, a major American columnist writing for a newspaper I have to say I know well has said that victimization is a status marker for college girls. I mean, the conversation is really screwed up at all levels of the country. We're out of time. It's time to thank Meade and Angelica for being here and wish you both the very best in continuing the work of Storycatchers.